as a journalist, it's free speech is really the oxygen with which allows us to be. For a journalist, free speech is really about, it's as essential as clean air,
Okay.
which we don't have in Delhi. Of late, I'd meet people in universities or colleges, young students, or even just well-wishers who'll say, wow, it's so brave what you guys are doing. And it's really sad that we say that because...
So the reason why I wanted you here is because you play two roles right now, in my head at least.
Yeah.
One is, of course, you're a journalist, like by training, and you have done ground reporting, etc. We have covered elections together.
Yeah.
But the second thing you do, which is the TV Newsance thing, you're also a satirist. You're a, let's say you make opinions. I would say you're a comedian also to a large extent.
I mean, I'm someone who points at comedy. I wouldn't say I'm a comedian myself.
I mean, you do write jokes.
Yeah, I do jokes. But the joke just writes itself.
It does.
Right? With TV
True.
news, you don't have to really joke. Thinking about satire, and here's what I think. I think when it comes to just politics, I think the nature of our country is to mock politicians. And I think India as a country has been pretty okay with the idea of the evil politician or the politician that's supposed to be mocked or at least not to be trusted.
So speech is not free then?
No, in India, no. We are far from that. But then there is also every night, at least, you've done that with me in Newsance. I've been doing this for 7 years. People can say the most atrocious things about minorities and get away with it. So it is free for some people.
Do you censor yourself?
Do I censor myself?
Free speech should be protected.
It's not so simple.
Yes, it's really not. Say hello to Manisha Pande,
Hi!
my ex-colleague from News Laundry. She is the managing editor at News Laundry, and she's the host of a very popular, very fun show called TV Newsance. If you haven't seen it, please go see it. It's basically making fun of the current TV media news ecosystem, who seem to have a lot of free speech these days. Yeah.
Too much free speech.
Too much free speech.
But I'm so happy to be here. It's such a lovely set, and I'm so happy to be a guest on your podcast.
Yes. This is your
I'm so
first
excited.
appearance on my channel, which I'm very excited
Oh,
about.
wow.
Yeah.
My God.
I've been trying to get you for a while, but it never matches.
Yeah.
This time I was determined.
Very nice. This reminds me of the thing we used to do, Lakku Garib Das, where you would slip into like, cup of tea.
Yeah.
It's a very nice, polished, Victorian feel I'm
Yes.
getting here with your set.
But
But happy to be here.
yes, thank you for being here. And I thought I should talk to you about this because obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Should free speech be protected?
Yes, of course.
Why?
And as a journalist, it's free speech is really the oxygen with which allows us to be. And when I say allows us to be, it allows us to say what we see as truthfully as possible, as clearly as possible. So for a journalist, free speech is really about, it's as essential as clean air,
Okay.
which we don't have in Delhi. And that is kind of, it's symbolic of what we are going through as journalists also currently with lack of clean air and lack of complete free speech. But, like I was thinking about this before coming here, that of late, I'd meet people in universities or colleges, young students, or even just well-wishers who'll say, wow, it's so brave what you guys are doing. And it's really sad that we say that because reporting, telling the truth, going to the ground, finding out what's happening should not be brave in any decent democracy. So Kumbh stampede happens. The government has been saying it's 37 people. We were one of the organizations to say, no, the number's close to 80. Saying that should not require bravery. It's very basic.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean when I say that free speech is really the oxygen that we guys need to kind of do what we're doing. And it shouldn't come to like, wow, so brave that you're able to do this.
Basically, you're saying
basic.
that it's normal. It's your job.
It's basic, yeah.
Yeah, it's like filling an Excel
clean
sheet.
water or clean air or like basic shit that we need to get things done.
Because like saying that, 37 people died
Yeah.
is just like looking out of the window and saying, it's raining. So it's like an observation that you're making.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be brave.
It should not be. The act of, and that's what's really sad today, that the act of basic news gathering has become brave. Journalists can be jailed for reporting on, corruption. They could be jailed for simply saying that the midday meal in the school is of bad quality. They could be jailed for saying that a particular hospital, didn't have requisite amenities to fight with an epidemic or whatever. So really basic stuff that we are supposed to be doing that we shouldn't even think about. We're doing a favor by, reporting on something that we're supposed to be reporting on. And the fact that that has now, become increasingly difficult is sad for us.
So the
as a
reason why
democracy.
I wanted you here is because you play two roles right now, in my head at least.
Yeah.
One is, of course, you're a journalist, like by training, and you have done ground reporting, etc. We have covered elections together.
Yeah.
But the second thing you do, which is the TV Newsance thing, you're also a satirist. You're a, well, let's say you make opinions. I would say you're a comedian also to a large extent.
I mean, I'm someone who points at comedy. I wouldn't say I'm a comedian myself.
I mean, you do write jokes.
Yeah, I do jokes, but the joke just writes itself.
It does.
Right? With TV
True.
news, you don't have to really joke.
True.
You just say, here's the joke.
Yeah, he's like,
Laugh.
you just show it and it's
Yeah.
a joke.
Yeah.
Agreed. But my thing is, because you play these sort of dual roles right now, I wanted to know from your perspective. Of course, I understand as a journalist, you need free speech. How do you look at it as a person who does satire?
Yeah, and actually, what a year it's been when it comes to stand-up comics, because we had the Samir Raina case,
Yes.
Ranveer Alabadia case, then we had the Kunal Kamra case. And as we record this, actually, there's a very sad case of influencer, I wouldn't say influencer, but a social media personality in Punjab who's been murdered because
Oh.
apparently a lot of her reels were vulgar, and the men who murdered her said that, we cannot tolerate this in our society. You cannot have this vulgarity. Granted that a lot of her content is, it's provocative. It's what a lot of young people today do when they take to Instagram or YouTube shorts. But she's had to pay with her life for that. So thinking about satire, the year started with that whole India's Got Latent
Yeah.
controversy.
Yeah.
And then I think 2 months later, there's a Kunal Kamra
Kunal Kamra.
controversy. And here's what I think. I think when it comes to just politics, I think the nature of our country is to mock politicians. And it's always been that.
You're saying it's our nature.
I think, yes, and I think we are forgetting that. If you look at, there's this one reel that often goes viral. I don't know if you've seen this on your Instagram, but it always comes up when you're looking at like political satire content. This poet who's saying, idhar bhi ghade hain, udhar bhi ghade hain.
I have seen
jidhar
that.
dekhta hu, gade hi gade. Then you have, we've grown up with things like Har Shaak pe Ullu Baita hai. Look at every movie that we've grown up on. The politician is never the nice guy.
No.
If you forget
they're
the
caricatured.
Gandhians,
Yeah.
if you forget the Gandhian kind of a politician, the right post-independence guys who are revered and who are always like shown in great light, the average politician is always shown as sometimes downright evil.
Oh, yeah.
Like
So
they're feudal, they're corrupt, they're rapists sometimes.
Yeah.
We have, pop culture wise, we've never worshipped the politician. Our comedy, our, हास्य कवि सम्मेलन जो होते थे उत्तर प्रदेश, बिहार, हिंदी heartland में, they've always mocked politicians. Unlike other countries, and I'd say even with the US, where we always want to see, the American citizen always wants their president to be like a model husband with a wife, with 2 children, beautiful, celebrating Christmas. We have never had these expectations of our politicians. And I think India as a country has been pretty okay with the idea of the evil politician or the politician that's supposed to be mocked or at least not to be trusted. So given that as the base, I think what we have seen of late, and especially cases like Kunal Kamra or anyone who has an FIR filed against them because they critique the party, it is simply a formula today to, present your nuisance value to the party. And it's like अपना CV चमकाने वाला काम कि देखो मैं कितना दंगा कर सकता हूँ तुम्हारे लिए. That's what Shiv Sainiks have always done also, right? Like the Kunal Kamra controversy, there's a hilarious thing where these guys were protesting, calling him Kunal Kalra.
Yeah.
Kunal Kalra, तो
Yeah.
वो पता भी नहीं है कौन है.
Yeah.
The guy who went on a rampage, he himself had kind of shifted parties. So I think it worked for him to tell his new masters that, look, I'm very useful. And I think what we are saying, this orchestrated attack for people who critique politicians is there's a formula to it. It's very planned and thought out. It's not organic. I don't think the genuinely Indians are appalled by what Kunal Kamra said.
One big case that happened, Professor Mahmoodabad of Ashoka University. So he did a Facebook post, right, which was in like very academic English, I would say. Some Pradhan in Haryana, BJP Pradhan, he filed a case, etc.
Then the State Women's Commission
The
also.
Women's Commission came in. They set up an SIT to sort of figure out what is the language and what is the double meaning within it. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he said that, the first thing I would do in court is to get that Pradhan and make him read that English post.
Yeah.
Like the post, like just verbatim, let alone understanding it. Just read it. If that Pradhan can actually read it in one go, I would be like, okay, nahi to fir mera case dismiss kar do. And it's true, right? Because do you think that
So the Pradhan in this case, to my mind, is signaling to whatever party that he wants to signal to that I'm useful.
Exactly.
The fault here is of the media that then takes these guys as representative of Indians outraged. Right? You just pick that one guy out who's outraged, you put him in your studio and say, oh, you manufacture a controversy around it that this is, it's hurting people and how can you say that? So there's this whole manufacturing of outrage, as we say, around an issue which I don't think most Indians are outraged about.
But what you said about...
This is about politics. I think where we really do take offense.
No, sorry. But what you said about was the incentive structure. So within a party, so let's say this Pradhan or whoever is filing the FIR, like our friend Dr. Medusa, she had like FIRs filed against them, Neha Rathod, all these people. Do you think like now political parties have just made this an incentive structure to sort of... कि जो भी बड़ा आदमी you can take down through whatever ways we will reward you?
Absolutely. And I don't even believe anymore that it's top down. The order to kind of go after this person, that person. I think now you have these, and which is scarier because it's a situation you can't really control. So somebody wants to prove to their party that I'm loyal, I'm the best foot soldier, or I care about what's being said about you. I'll go on a rampage, I'll do dharna, I'll do todfod, I'll file an FIR and mera sikka chamkega. So it's an easy way to kind of just be relevant to your political ecosystem. And what makes it worse is that the media then picks this up. You're an overnight star. You're Rahul Kanal, for example.
Yes.
He was brought on to every television studio like he's done something amazing.
So Rahul
Karni
Kanal...
Sena guys.
Yeah.
Total nuisance. And they're just called every issue. Every time they're upset about a movie, they call to the studios.
That's true.
Bhai, please tell us now what you feel.
Interestingly enough, I saw this. So Rahul Kanal, for those of you who don't know, was the guy who went to that studio and trashed it when the Kunal Kamra incident happened. He went to the Habitat. He was one of the people who was basically throwing chairs and whatever. After that, he was called on news channels and he admitted that he did it, and as if he has done something brave.
I'm educated.
Interestingly enough, a week later, I saw something interesting in the newspaper Midday. There was an advertisement wishing Anant Ambani happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And it was by Rahul Kanal Foundation. Like it was sponsored by that. I was like, ये कैसे connection लग गया दोनों?
और उसने कितनी बार कुणाल कामरा को प्रेज भी किया when he was with Aditya Thackeray, Shiv Sena, original Shiv Sena. He used to like tweet at Kunal Kamra and say, "Wow, Modi ji, wow," and all that, like मजा आ रहा है. So clearly, I don't even think he's outraged. It is just that now it makes political sense for him. It's performative. It is the highest form of political performance, I think, in today's time. And what the section that has really done a huge disservice to this discourse is, I would say, the media, because we are not calling it out for what it is. We are making it seem like the entire country or Maharashtrians are outraged by the fact that some song was sung about Shinde. And you're making it to be some, and then there's a chilling effect. Then, once you have people who land up, it doesn't matter whether you support the person or don't support, like Habitat, right? It shut down. They had to be really careful. They had to issue statements saying that we don't, support XYZ. And once you have that, then you create a chilling effect. But the fault here is of, I think, primarily the media that really kind of makes this into something that it's not. Because like I said, I think Indians are largely okay with politicians being trashed. And voting is a very transactional. Every party has its core 10%, 15%. That's the bhakt. Like, मर जाएंगे, जान दे देंगे और मेरे नेता के बारे में कुछ मत बोलना टाइप.
दादी
All
से वोट
politicians
करते आ
have it.
रहे हैं.
हाँ,
Yeah.
जन्मजात कांग्रेस
Yeah,
हैं,
yeah.
बचपन से बीच भाजपा ही हैं, you know, those kind of things that you hear. So those committed voters are there who may be outraged and who may come out, who may be, you know, motivated to come out and do dharnas. But I don't think that's a large section of Indian voter for whom voting is very transactional, and they're not like, I like, exactly like with Shinde Sena, even the guys who would have voted for him, I don't think they would be so outraged by a song that Kamal made.
So, I mean, going back to
But
our...
that's politics. But that's politics.
That's politics, yes.
The other aspect of it, because we were talking about satirists, I think with Samay Raina's case, people were genuinely outraged.
Yes, I
Right?
was just...
Because that's, you're talking about family,
Yeah,
you're talking about sex,
yes.
you're talking about parents.
Incest, whatever, yeah.
So, genuinely, I knew people within my friend circle, my family. I could see, you can also sense now when an outrage is, as people in the media who follow discourse online, you can sense when the outrage is genuinely like, you know, there and when it's not there. And you could genuinely feel, and especially the older generation was very aggrieved by what was said. That what's happening? How are these young people saying these things? Like, don't they not have parents? Do they not have any? Are they not civilized? So I think that and religion also. Like, I love this one example I always give is Manoj Muntasir when that movie came out where he gave those atrocious lyrics or whatever. Even the dialogues were like, Kattar BJP wala were very outraged that isko to band kar dena chahiye.
Yeah.
He should never get a job again because of what he's done. How could he make, you know, Hanuman say the words that he did? So I think religion and family values, when that is up for a joke, that's when I think Indians get very aggrieved.
I wanted to talk
That's
to you
always
about...
tricky, I think, for any satirist to venture into.
Agreed. So, okay, so like if you want to look at thoda sa zoom out karke, so the sentence we are taking is the value that we are working with right now as a starting point is free speech should be protected, right? For that, we need to define a speech and whether it's free, right?
Yeah.
So speech would be something like what Samay or what this Ranveer Alabadia did. Let's take that as an example. Was he free to do that?
I mean, in an ideal world, yes. And I think the worst thing that should happen to you as a comic is that the joke bombs.
And people
one
will
laughs.
criticize you, nobody laughs.
Or no one laughs. That's the worst thing that can happen to you on a stage. You know, you say something and everyone's like, huh? What?
But the Assam police shouldn't drag you to...
Yeah, so ideally he should, of course, have all the freedom in the world to say what he did. Of course, it was just deeply ironic that Samay often had athletes said on his shows that, you know, he doesn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. He doesn't want to get into that kind of comedy that upsets people because that's not my jam. Ranveer Alabadia, with everything he's done, all his YouTube podcasts, he's very clear about the fact that he wants to be this massy guy and not upset anyone. And how that completely
flipped.
And that's the most dangerous thing about when you want to curtail speech, that you never know when it comes back to bite you in the ass, you know. Both these gentlemen had kind of said that we don't like this idea of upsetting people. Why should we hurt anyone? But there's no control over who gets hurt, no? And what kind of triggers. So you have to have at baseline that, okay, hurt sentiments, you navigate it the way you want to, what's comfortable for you. But it should never mean for anyone an FIR or jail time or having to, you know, get lawyers to make your case in the court. That is a baseline that we have to agree with as society.
That's interesting because, so Samay Raina, not clean comedian, but like non-political comedian, let's call him that
exactly.
way. Like, मुझे कोई political party or religious group को I don't want to upset them.
That I have a formula.
Yeah.
That I'm not going to touch politics, I'm not going to touch religion, and then everything is game, sex, women, relationships, whatever.
Correct.
And I'll be safe.
Correct. And Ranveer Alabadia, on the other hand, was actively sucking up to the Modi government at one point, got awards.
Yeah.
So both of these people coming together, you would think that, oh, they're making a funny reality show, which was very popular.
And it's safe in the traditional...
Yeah.
In how we're looking at times
Exactly.
today.
I mean...
You're going to be... But that's the thing. It's a beast that you cannot control. Once you have a situation where the mob can direct what happens to you and where the sentiment of the mob can be upset to the point that you could have an FIR against you, then there's no controlling it. So you
So
can't say मैं
are you
safe
saying-
रहूंगा, उसका कोई formula, I think safety का कोई formula
Formula
नहीं
nahi hai. But are you saying that the concept of speech itself is now getting defined by the powerful or the mob? Because two separate things. I mean, of course, the mob is powerful by itself.
Yeah.
But then one individual like a Narendra Modi, Amit Shah is also powerful.
Yeah.
I don't think these people are defining it anymore. It's the mob.
So, but even in Samay's case, politicians jumped in, no? Like Hemanta
That's
Biswa
true.
Sarma said. So I think a
But
mob
do they
will-
follow the mob? Or do they come first? Because
I think they feed off each other.
Hmm.
But I don't think, of course, a politician will always have way more value because you have a police at your command.
Correct.
So large swaths of people could be unhappy about something, but it may lead to nothing till there's political intent to make an example of that.
Correct.
Right? Even in this case, Fadnavis was also, jumped in
Hmm.
immediately with his statement that I'm shocked at what's happening. YouTubers have to be controlled. Hemanta Biswa Sarma said this is, pathetic. We can't have this. So
Even the Supreme Court made comments
Yeah.
to that end.
the Supreme Court made an observation. that this is- we are very-
yeah.
What did they say?
They basically said that this is not how it should be. And
Yeah.
they told the center
Again,
to bring in a
I
law
think,
to
like, when
control
you
this.
touch that family value thing, no, in India, that is wholesale. You will get trashed from all sides. It doesn't matter Congress, BJP, left, right, center. It is no one takes that.
Everybody
Yeah,
will be offended.
So that is there.
So speech is not free then.
No, in India, no. We are far from that. But then there is also every night, at least you've done that with me in Nuisance. I've been doing this for 7 years. People can say the most atrocious things about minorities and get away with it. So it is free for some people.
Interesting.
Right? You can talk about thuk jihad. You can talk about how there's video game jihad. You can talk about how Muslims putting mehendi is henna jihad. You can completely lie about people, destroy lives. The kind of stuff we saw with Riya, Sudha, Bhardwaj, or any of the activists, or Umar Khalid. The kind of wild stuff that is said without any consequence.
I think one of the
Completely
most
free to do it.
interesting things I found out because of you was the Seema Haider situation.
Yeah.
That woman who came from Pakistan and was here. I cannot believe how obsessed our media was with that. I did not know this was happening. I saw Nuisance and I was like, wait, there is a whole world out there that is talking about this.
And now there's this Sonam and Raja
Yeah.
Raghuvanshi murder case where again, one of the accused in the case, who is supposedly a friend of Sonam, Raj, the media goes to the mother's house and that is grotesque. And when you look at that, you feel like, okay, it should not be. We should not have so much freedom. Because you have cameras poking at her, mics poking at her, she's panting, she's crying, she's literally saying, "Mujhe chhod do." She's literally saying that to the media.
Okay.
And they're just like vultures hounding her, know. So you're also free. So I think it's also a lot about power dynamic here. All said and done, like a Samay and a Ranveer will resurrect, right? They'll come out. But a Kunal may not be able to get a show for a very long time. Similarly, your class defines how people can trample over you, say whatever they want to about you, and there'll be no consequences. And whereas if you're somebody powerful, even a simple word of critique can land you in jail. So it's also very
Because like in an
class and power dynamic is quite a thing that plays a role in defining.
That's true. Because, I mean, the example you were just giving of this mother, in an ideal world where speech is free, the media would do this and it would be protected?
No, I don't think so. Because I think you should, because there is privacy, there is trespassing laws. You can't enter my barge into my house if I
and
don't want
do
you
this.
to. And there is defamation. There is such a thing as defamation,
Yeah.
right? You cannot go say whatever you want to about me recklessly if that's going to harm me. So there has to be consequence of what you're saying within law. And, I've actually, when you're younger, I've seen this change in me too, where when I'm younger, you have a more radical view towards free speech that kuch bhi karna,
Right.
everything should be allowed.
Right. Right.
जिसको जो जितना गंद
मचा सकते हो.
फैलने दो,
हाँ,
something good will come out of it, and the gand will get separated.
Correct.
But I think as you go older, you kind of realize that no, the gand invariably impacts the most powerless people. It is not some equal stage where, you know, a lotus will bloom from the keychad or whatever. Like, you know, those radical and kind of, what do you call them? Very idealist views that you have about free speech, they turn out to be false as you see more and more of what's happening. And so I do feel that there has to be protection for people who are especially at the receiving end of relentless media campaigns, smear campaigns, and there has to be a very strong kind of, you don't have the right to smear someone to a point that you're calling them a terrorist or that you're calling them whatever, Tukde Tukde gang or Naxal or whatever, with no regard and with no consequences. So I feel like there has to be consequences
There have to be. But
within law.
when you talk about speech or free speech, the primary sort of
So yeah, I mean, free speech is not...
idea is that free speech exists to express ideas.
Yeah.
Like, let's look at it that way, right?
Yeah.
You know, like free speech exists because someone has an idea, they will express it, it will go into public, people will react to it, either positively, negatively. The positive stuff will probably get worked on further, more ideas will come out, and so on and so forth, and then we make progress as humanity.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you look at the example of America and how they handle and how they protect free speech, which is also not absolute.
Yeah.
They have their own
I mean,
restrictions.
call to violence is always... You're never allowed to do that.
Yeah,
you
like
cannot call to violence.
can't say fire in a crowded theater, that sort of thing. But my thing is, okay, so if free speech exists to express these ideas, now I don't think that the whole Ranveer Alabadia thing that happened, where he's like talking about parents, etc., I dismissed it as a stupid thing. I didn't say that usko jail jana chahiye. I didn't say that isko...
You didn't find it funny?
I mean, I didn't find it funny. I was like, cringe, whatever. But at the same
After
time...
that, it was copied. So I think that also took off the sheen of the joke. Because
Yeah.
it was like a formula joke, right, that he copied.
Yeah, it was like from some Australian YouTuber or something. But I know friends who used to really enjoy that show. वो बंद हो गया, right? Now, I know that a giant amount of audience was really enjoying what was happening on that show. And because it got cancelled...
The younger generation really did. And
Yeah.
I think they really... There's this catharsis, I think, that you feel when you have someone with no filters.
I know.
And you can just watch this person have... And I think that was one quality of Samay that was really popular with young people. That this guy just says what comes to his mind.
Yeah.
And it's just so cathartic to watch it.
Yeah.
So a lot of young fans.
Yeah. So that show getting cancelled. A lot of people were like, oh, that show was a good idea. It got cancelled because of this. My problem is this, right? Which is that when ideas are coming, speech exists to express ideas.
Yeah.
But one idea which is getting cancelled might not result in other ideas sort of existing anymore. That is where censorship comes in. Because now Samay Raina will never do a show like this. I doubt he will, right? Maybe later, whatever, regime change ke baad. Do you censor yourself?
Do I censor myself? Yes, I do.
Why?
So I guess I do it because I'm aware that I'm a journalist and I will be all said and done, even if I use humor, satire to express what I want to. I am still operating within the boundaries of journalism, and people have to view me as a credible voice, or they have to view me as somebody who they can trust. And I think that trust comes with balance. So I'm censoring myself to be as fair and balanced, even if I'm being funny or I'm being ridiculous or I'm making fun of someone. So in that sense, like, I will probably, like a comic may just say the first thing that comes to them, or when I'm discussing something with my team or friend. Like, you know, so many times we discuss, like, you worked on Newsance, we'll say something and, oh, we can't say that.
Yeah, it's thoda zyada ho jayega. That is what we
so
say.
You and I will say to each other, that's the first thing. And that's probably the funniest thing to say also.
Yeah.
But then you're like, no, okay, we're not going to say that. But do it because I'm aware that I'm not a comic. I'm also, there's a journalistic purpose to the critique, which is to make people understand that they need to expect more out of their news, and for people to understand misinformation, propaganda in news. So to have that effect, I make sure that I appear to be as balanced as I can in that formula of humor and satire. So I censor myself there.
Is there a element of fear towards that censorship?
No. There's no element of fear. It's more an element of responsibility.
Fair.
I feel more like I have to be responsible. There's no fear, and that's luckily because my organization really backs me on everything. We have great set of lawyers. We have a very solid institutional structure where I know that if something happens tomorrow, I'm not fending for myself alone.
Correct.
There's people who are going to back me up. So that allows me to be very fearless with what I want to say. But then I feel very duty bound. So it's more out of a sense of duty than anything else, which I think a comic need not care about, right? And they shouldn't even. Because that'll just make them very boring.
Because, yes, true.
Yeah.
But, the thing is, censorship comes from these two things, right? I think sense of responsibility is one. Where
Yeah.
you feel like saying certain things might not just offend people, but it's just... in a respectable society, maybe it would be taken in the
क्यों
correct
करना
way.
है?
क्यों करना है? क्यों trigger करना है लोगों को फालतू में? That's the sentiment. But the fear part of it, right? I feel like one of the biggest reason why a lot of brands won't support someone like you or me or someone who is anti-government is because of this assumed fear that there will be retribution, and therefore they censor themselves, which means that speech is curtailed,
Yeah.
whether you like it or not. Some movies, some shows, some artistic expression of ideas, etc., are just not in existence today because nobody is willing to back it. What do you feel about that?
I give this example a lot. Like Rang De Basanti, can you ever imagine it
Yeah.
being made today?
Yeah.
The politician gets assassinated and those are the guys who are heroes.
Also, the guy is...
And again, my point of like our disdain for politics.
True.
We have never loved politics and
True.
we've seen it through our movies. But something like a Rang De Basanti, there'll be NSA, UAPA slapped on director, actor, everyone. How dare you show that, you're promoting murder.
I know.
And look how we celebrated that movie back then.
Yeah.
It led to... I think so many kids just wanted to do candlelight march after watching it.
True.
कि
And
अब
उसके बाद ही तो
कुछ
अन्ना हजारे
कोई
movement हुआ था.
reason भी नहीं है लेकिन हम मोमबत्ती जलाएंगे.
And also, what will make it worse? Because the central storyline was that the politician was doing corruption while
Yeah.
buying a plane.
Yeah.
So, like, if you compare that with Rafael right now, that would be seen like a direct attack on like a Modi ji
Yeah.
or
So-
someone else.
So much of, and especially I feel that in the entertainment industry, maybe because the money is, I think censorship also has to, it comes in when there's too much money riding on you. So maybe Bollywood, the kind of movies that we're seeing, we're not going to see those kind of movies, political songs or the politician as the bad character. And today, though, even having a Hindu character fall in love with a Muslim character, you can be attacked for promoting love jihad. So many of them don't even show that. Like that Suitable Boy controversy,
Yeah.
where the character is Muslim, the girl's Hindu, and they're in a temple, and there's outrage over it, which again the media is happy to fan. I think entertainment industry would just be way more careful because there's too much money riding on their shoulders, so they just don't want to take the risks. And some of it is actually just sad because I think it's so clipping your own wings without even, that Advani cliche of crawling when you were asked to bend. You want to clip your wings to such an extent which is not even being asked of you in entertainment and movies. I feel like that's
Is that the
kinda
case in
sad.
journalism as well?
Yeah, of course. And again, like we are a small independent media house with like 60 people. We are subscription driven. We don't have to depend on ads. So we have that kind of freedom, where we're not worried about a brand saying we will not touch you. Big media houses, one is the direct dependence on government advertisement, having the possibility of having that cut off. So you cannot say anything against the government. And now if you see, it's not just the BJP, like there were the Kumbh ads.
Yes.
There are the Aam Aadmi Party ads. There's the Telangana ads. So every politician is pumped in money to the point that now I think it was funny that some of my colleagues were telling me in bigger channels, it's that you don't touch anyone now. Just don't touch any party.
And that's why they do...
सबसे ads बटोरने हैं.
That's why they do like this Meghalaya case. That's why they go after these
तो फिर
stories.
क्या करें? फिर सीमा हैदर दिखाओ, फिर सोनम राजा रघुवंशी का murder दिखाओ. Forget the center. Like even when you look at states, investigative reporting on states, corruption within state governments. When was the last time that you would see a Sheesh Mahal,
Yeah.
which is again a very like.
But that's
very
also like
politically-
so motivated.
It's very
weird.
motivated. It's hardly, and you can tell it's a direct plant, and it's so. And the other money spinner is conclaves. Everyone has these big conclaves, these big events sponsored by big brands where you have to have the prime minister attend. You have to have the home minister attend. So you possibly cannot say anything about them. Then
Access.
you have to have them attend your relevance pretty much depends on whether these guys look at you or not. Or whether you get an interview before elections. So that is one of the reasons why the media also is completely kind of done way beyond what was asked of
But
them.
now
or
तो they are
expected of
not
them.
even getting interviews. Modi ji is going to
Before
podcasts.
elections मिल जाते हैं ना. Before elections फिर भी मिल जाते हैं. Like that 1 month, अभी बिहार इलेक्शन आएगा तो उससे 1 महीने पहले 2-3 चुनिंदा लोगों को मिल जाएंगे.
But now they are moving towards like
Yeah.
other podcasts and Lex Friedman.
I think when they, or Nikhil Kamath.
Nikhil Kamath.
And I think there's an understanding within the government also that if we want to be heard and if we want to have an impact with our propaganda, we need to at least be seen with people who are not seen as outright propagandists. So you need a podcaster like a Nikhil Kamath who's not seen as, one way or the other. He's this guy, he talks about business, startups, he's talking about the India growth story. So a neutral person to sit along with rather than be seen with an Amish or be seen even with a Smita Prakash, because these guys are just seen as people who are going to just, agree with what we're saying.
Yeah.
So,
In a very strange way, they're looking for new audiences.
they're looking at their own audience. I will tell
Hardcore
you,
audience.
During the Lok Sabha elections, when I was traveling to Banaras and Azamgarh and, Uttar Pradesh, parts of Uttar Pradesh, even the hardcore BJP supporter would say that we are a bit tired of what we are seeing on TV. Fine, we like Modi. Fine, we voted for him. But our son, is sitting at home, jobless, and there's been paper leaks, and there's no solution to this. Or that he's very angry. He's said he's not going to vote for him. So within your household, when you're seeing that there are issues, you cannot be happy with the fact when you turn on the TV and saying, "Sab bahut hi badhiya hai, hum Vishwakarma bन गए, hum आगे चल गए." So that irritation, even a BJP supporter was feeling with the media. It may not translate directly to the BJP. But I remember meeting this lady in Assi Ghat in Varanasi who very clearly said that, ठीक है, लेकिन ऐसा ही नहीं है कि सब अच्छा ही हो रहा है. तो टीवी ऑन करेंगे कि सब अच्छा ही हो रहा है, सब अच्छा ही हो रहा है बोले जा रहे हैं, ये तो गलत है.
I think I've seen that video that you did. Right? Yeah.
So there's a realization also that it's beyond a point, it's pissing people off. Right? When your circumstances aren't changing and when you are dealing with a lot of stuff, every evening you don't want to be told everything is great.
I
have this one really funny story which I have to tell you. One of somebody I know, her husband is a huge Sudhir Chaudhary fan. And she does not like him. So she would tell me that, देखते रहते हैं सारा दिन और मुझे बिल्कुल अच्छा नहीं लगते. और मैं तो उनको बताती हूँ कि and she's Muslim and it's like an interfaith marriage. Now, one day she came to me during COVID. She was really happy that, finally उनकी आंखें खुल गई कि वो सुधीर चौधरी का शो देख रहे थे और गुस्सा हो गए. मैंने कहा क्यों ऐसा क्या बोला? Because COVID चल रहा था and I think there was one show where he said that, अगर आप घर में बैठे हैं तो क्या हुआ, आप ऑनलाइन शॉपिंग कर सकते हैं. Kind of saying that COVID is happening, it's okay, but, you can sit at home. Boss, our jobs, we've lost jobs, we don't have an income, we've been set back by like 3 years. You can't have an anchor say online shopping करो ना, पैसे ही नहीं है. So he got very upset.
Oh!
The husband. That, क्या बोल रहा है? Because he knows that, dude, I've lost my job, I don't have money. Like, what is this news anchor telling कि online shopping करो?
I had this experience with my uncle. My uncle is a very big Modi fan, right? Super, ultra Modi fan, right? Like to a level where he was giving death threats to people who were criticizing him, including me. बहुत weird था वो. One very interesting thing that happened during Lok Sabha elections was that ठीक है, he's praising Modi, उसका propaganda diligently forward हो रहा है WhatsApp groups पे, etc. When Modi said that he's non-biological, it broke him. Like, I don't know what happened, but he's like, ये थोड़ा ज्यादा हो गया भाई साहब, मतलब ये क्या आप खुद को भगवान समझने लगे कि ये लोग and everything. I was like, that is what it took to sort of break that illusion of ये. It's very strange, but so I mean, the free speech thing, right? So, what you said about that lady who was like, सब कुछ अच्छा तो नहीं हो रहा है, jobs
हाँ.
नहीं है, ये वो whatever. That speech is not getting represented, right?
Yeah.
But the speech that is getting represented is absolutely ridiculous, like or ridiculous, exaggerated, or just not true, right? Do you think that will somehow balance itself out now based on what you're seeing?
I don't know, balance it out or not, but I think there's a hunger in people to be able to watch something when it comes to news, at least, whatever party they support. And like I said, it's maybe that woman went and voted for the BJP. That's different from her disdain for what she expects out of a news show. Or, her basic expectation that a politician, no matter how much she likes or supports, has to be still answerable to my issues. If I'm facing XYZ issues, there has to be an answer to what is the way to fix it, rather than just saying I'm non-biological, I'm great, or we are Vishwaguru. So I think at least in that sense, and this is why you see people on YouTube just being so popular, because I think there is a hunger in people to have their issues be reflected. Most people kind of want that. I think propaganda on TV has come to a point where it's completely working against the government also. And I think there is a realization, which is why they're seeking newer platforms, newer faces to kind of be seen with. And at least when it comes to an expectation of understanding the reality around you, the bhakts will be bhakts, the blind, whatever devotees will be blind devotees. But general people, I think they do want some sort of lagam on this kind of unbridled propaganda that they see on TV.
So is it because I call this the cringe line? I mean, I've experienced this. So we have like this movie club where we watch cringe movies, and basically like just like something like a Desh Drohi or whatever. But there is one thing that happens very interestingly. I was watching Archies, right? That stupid movie that was there. We were watching it for cringe, right? I think 40 minutes into the movie, I started getting angry at it. It was not fun anymore. Initially, it was fun, ha ha ha, bahut cringy, whatever. Then something happened, which just started triggering me कि they're insulting me now.
हाँ.
That is what is
So
happening.
that feeling in people ki stop insulting us, yaar. कि हमें
Yeah.
पता है कि क्या reality है ना. We are
Yeah.
we are buying vegetables every day. We are seeing our children struggling for jobs or admissions. Okay, we support you, but there are some realities we can't negate, no? Within
Something
our own
changed
household.
though.
Yeah.
Like, did you feel that shift happening? Because I know I was when we were working together, there was still this whole the propaganda was working. Let's put it that way. 2019, the TV propaganda, the noise, the disgusting things that they were saying was still working. There were a lot of people still cheering for anchors, etc. But something changed, as you said.
I think propaganda works. Effective political propaganda has to have some basis of truth in it. Right? So, like 2019, when we do surgical strikes, there's a truth to the act of surgical strike.
Yes.
And then you can really hype it up that it's never happened and Modi's great and Chappan inch. And so then it works because it's on the back of some action.
Right.
But if there are no jobs, if your neta is not even talking about it, and you're saying कि हम number one हो गए हैं, तो वो it's based on nothing,
Right.
right? Or that those students who came back from war Rukwadi,
Yeah.
and you had students right outside the airport when people went with mic, they said कि क्या है हमको कुछ नहीं मिला वहाँ पे. We were really like, so propaganda, good political propaganda should be based on there's some kernel of truth for it to work. And I think what happened post 2019 on the back of numbers, on the back of this majority, there was this sense that anything will fly. We'll say whatever and people will just take it because,
I think that changed during COVID also then.
and then that kind of doesn't work, I think. Thankfully, luckily.
Yeah.
It can work. I don't know.
Because
North
COVID
Korea,
ke time
maybe
pe-
it works. You can just keep saying whatever you want to. And absolute dictatorships, it works.
But COVID ke time pe, because I know, like I was working there as well. I remember this, where in COVID, they were targeting this Tablighi Jamaat thing, etc. And a portion of media was praising Modi for saving people. My literal neighbors are dying. I think that is also maybe like something that sort of broke that illusion
Yeah.
that they are lying to us.
And I think one thing that really impacts people, no matter what your political allegiances are, when in your family when your family is impacted by something, like paper leaks, for example. I felt that was a very emotional issue for a lot of BJP
Correct.
supporters.
Correct.
Because you're seeing somebody in your family struggle through it. So then it's hard to kind of ignore it and, so personally when you're impacted by realities around you, it's hard to just keep blindly supporting a party. And again, like I said, it doesn't mean you will not vote for them because voting is a way more complex act. But at least there's an irritation with the media that doesn't want to kind of talk about real issues. And that's a good sign for India, I think. Something to hold on to. And which is exactly why people like Dhruv Rathi were raking in the kind of numbers they did in the run-up to elections.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, but on just the concept of on the internet, are we free to mock, critique? Is it not our right? Yes, it is our right, and we really hold that right very dearly. Where we say very clearly that news laundry, especially when I can critique other people, I should be able to take 100 times more sharper critique on myself. People should be able to criticize me. People should be able to be harsh with, they should be able to be really harsh with the kind of critique they want to present because we do it, and so it's good for us to be able to take it.
Yeah.
But there's a difference in critique, in criticism, in harsh criticism, in mocking someone, and really tearing that person down and what they stand for, and just pure abuse. Also, importantly, I kind of find it this kind of debasing that a lot of people do online, where, especially targeted towards women, where you want to call someone a sex worker to make them feel like they're shit.
Yeah.
I think it's wrong at so many levels because even within the, there's so much sort of debasement that sex workers themselves feel.
Correct.
Or go through at the hands of society for something that, that is not their fault. And I feel this whole thing of weaponizing this to just go at women is something that has to be called out. Sex workers also have dignity. It's not okay to use, a slur around prostitution and throw it at women and kind of debase them. That is just not okay. And that is not, it's not a critique, na, then. Like, we're not in the realm of my work.
Yeah, it's not.
Or what I stand for, or my journalism, or my organization's journalism. That we're up for that. Please bring it on. Bring on your harshest of criticism. But that is not what this is.
It's not valuable.
It's not valuable. It's not at all valuable. It's crass. And even for politicians who coined the word prostitute, come up with something better, yaar. I mean, वो 1000 साल से हो रहा है ये कि किसी को तुम prostitute बोल दो, whore बोल दो और चुप करा दो. मतलब अगर तुम, if you don't like your opponents, also at least put in the hard work to come up with a critique that actually takes them down.
Yeah. This is where reasonable restrictions come in. So again, in India, mein free speech is not absolute.
Yeah.
Just letting you know, guys. Free
और
speech.
मुझे लगता है, just to add one more thing, like जो काफ़ी लोग जैसे सुधा भारद्वाज हैं, I always take her example because I think few people have done what she has for the poorest, most marginalized sections of society. Should this come under free speech that you're calling her a Naxal, a woman who studied law at the age of 40 to fight cases that no one else would? She's gone to the court of law. She's taken refuge in the Indian constitution for what she believes in. Is it okay to call her a Maoist or a terrorist or, whatever? That kind of thing has to have consequences. And I think we just don't have those defamation. It's not swift in India. Like in the US, you can just sue.
Yeah.
In India, it's not swift, so people don't. And often the people who could sue are just too powerless to be able to kind of do it. Or like Riya Chakravarti.
That is what I was coming to.
बारे में बोला यार, काला जादू,
Exactly.
Ideally, she should be able to sue people.
But
great case to sue.
Here is what I was coming to. So Article 19(1) of the Constitution says that free speech and expression will be protected. But there is Article 19(2) which gives reasonable restrictions to speech, right? Things like sovereignty and integrity of India, security of state, public relations with foreign states, public order, decency or morality, contempt of court, defamation, incitement to an offense. The two things which I always find interesting are decency or morality
Yeah.
and defamation. Now, defamation is one thing where, as you said, in America, you can just sue people for doing this, and that is what News Laundry is
Yeah.
also like sort of doing. Decency or morality. This is something that I want to like sort of explore a little bit, because how do you understand what is decent and not? Because of this Ranveer Allahabadiya case, especially, when do you know you are crossing the line?
No, it's very tricky. And again, the thing is that the recent case of Kamal Kaur, she goes by the name Kamal Kaur Bhabi. I mean, she used to on YouTube, and she was murdered. And the guys
This is the influencer from
from
Punjab.
Punjab, the guys who did it said we did it to protect religion and sense of decency. And there's been religious leaders in Punjab who've come, Sikh religious leaders who've come out in support and saying what has happened is great. Look at the case of Chamkila, where again vulgar songs. So it's so tricky. Look, I mean, vulgarity also sometimes it can be very nuanced. No, sometimes poets have been vulgar,
Yeah.
writers have been vulgar at some point or the other, right? Manto was vulgar. So at every point, and then there is also vulgarity. I'm not saying that everything is poetic. Especially today on the internet, it's a very, sex and titillation is the easiest way to kind of rake in the views and the numbers. You have a lot of people who take to Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts, and there's nothing poetic or literary about it. It's pure like sex,
Vulgarity, sex, huh.
get the views, get the money in. But I'm saying that it's a curious world to kind of navigate, and what we can all agree. So we all will have different sensibilities. I may find it cringe, I may find it vulgar. Somebody else may find it, oh, women are just owning up their bodies, they're doing what they want to with it, and they're using it in the way that they want to. It can be very empowering for somebody from rural Punjab or rural UP to take to reels and be raunchy or whatever. So, and then again, I may have a view of a movie which I may find vulgar, you may not. But baseline, let's agree that you can't lose your life for being vulgar. Actual life or your freedom to move around. And I think that every society has to baseline agree on. And then outrage per se or offense per se is not a bad thing. It's good to be offended. When we are offended by things is when we actually think about things and we outrage and something good comes out of it. I'm offended by what's happening on TV news every day.
Yeah.
Right? And I try and use my offended sensibilities to then come with something that
Correct.
I can say something about. So be offended by vulgarity. I'm not saying that, you should be okay with it. But then use it for something else to come out of it.
Meaning that
A different culture or a different
Yeah.
stance. So I think for any society that has to move from the dark ages to enlightenment, baseline we have to agree that irrespective of what we feel about what we are seeing, we cannot kill. We should not be wanting them in jail. We can be supremely offended, but then we use that offense to come up with something better.
Yeah. So it's not like if you're offended by TV news, you'll lead a mob and
Yeah.
like burn down a TV studio or something. That's not
Exactly.
done.
Exactly.
You need to, like, you do your videos, you critique
Yeah.
it, you whatever.
So even with vulgarity within movies or poetry or pop culture, there has to be a response which is not like, let's kill this person.
But what I think is
I mean, वो तो खैर
happening.
बहुत ही बिल्कुल ही that's
See,
very
this example is, I think, what happened to that influencer is horrible, right?
Yeah.
Now, religious leaders supporting them, police supporting them, even with like this Ali Mahmoodabad case, like SIT coming in and doing this, Supreme Court also saying High Court also saying examine karo. Don't you think the
and sadly, I want to
reasonable-
add one more layer to this, which is most people will agree that ठीक है ऐसा करोगे तो ऐसे ही तो होगा.
But that's my
that's
thing.
kind of
No, my
where-
thing is that this thing is getting defined by just the powerful. Like the reasonable restrictions, these words like decency, morality, who decides? I feel like society at large decides, sure. So like what happened with Ranveer Allahabadiya, I think he got like decent outrage from everyone. Like and I think he understood that, okay, fine, maybe what I said was
said
wrong.
sorry very quickly.
But does the police need to get involved?
Yeah.
That is where I feel like the actual law comes into action, and that is where the restrictions come into action, right? How do we solve this? Is there a way to solve? Matlab, is there a solution to this?
Start a party.
Start.
No.
I actually, when I fought the elections, one of the things that I was thinking about was the one place where I will get absolute freedom of speech is on a political stage while I'm doing political rallies and giving a speech on
हाँ
stage.
कुछ भी बोल सकते हो तो
कुछ भी बोल सकते हो.
और सब चलेगा
Yeah, and like,
वाहवाही भी होगी
huh?
वाहवाही भी होगी
Wow, why
तालियां
okay.
भी होगी
Actually, I wanted to do an experiment and it finally didn't work out because we didn't get the permission to do it. I wanted to set up a stage and I wanted to call like a few comedians to just do their worst. Just do their worst political sets ever. And it was going to be something wild, but of course permission ही नहीं मिला हमको. उसमें भी permission लेना पड़ता है. But do you see any hope or are you like completely like
No, I'm always hopeful, and there's no other way but than to be hopeful. That's the only way that you can continue to do what you do. So, I am hopeful in the younger generation. I feel like there is at least some sense that, okay, even if I'm offended by something, you can look the other way. But how do you solve it? I don't know. But to start with, I genuinely feel that a big blame that has to be given for the state of affairs today is the media. Did we need to discuss Samay Raina for 1 week when there were so many other things happening? Like, we are actively using legitimate outrage that people may feel to distract them from what they should actually be outraged about, right? The
right?
things around them that actually impact their life, not what some comic said in a show, in a closed whatever event. So, things will improve, I think, with better discourse in the media. I don't have any hope from TV. I think it should die. TV news should just like disappear.
Oh, I'm glad you've come to this now.
I mean, it's difficult,
Yeah.
but I don't think anything sensible can come out of that. Maybe it'll be like what happened with entertainment, right? And television news, that after a point you had to go to OTT if you wanted to watch a good movie or a good series. So maybe people will realize that if you want credible news, you have to go to YouTube and you have to find your own, either news people or professionals or creators to kind of understand the world around you, not just for news but just to understand the world around you or just to have better discourse. So hopefully maybe what we can have is better discourse online, because it's in the interest of everyone to have that. Again, more than anything else, digital media really needs free speech, a good robust debate around what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And I think, look, in India, because of, I get the reasonable restrictions also because it's a new nation. We're such a diverse country. We are coming out of a bloody partition. There's blood, there's anger, there's insecurity around different states, identity. What is our position going to be? And I'm not just saying religious, but linguistic identities, ethnic identities, tribals, different caste groups. I mean, there's such a dynamic that I guess it was important at that time to protect these feelings that could be hurt, or to give everyone a sense that you will be protected. What you believe in will be protected by law. So I guess from that frame of mind, I still see reasonable restrictions. Like I said, no, that I've become less radical. Like when you're
Yeah.
young, you feel. But I feel today that, okay, maybe religion is something that we have to be careful about in India for a very long time, because that's just who we are as a society. Nothing works in India, and I think the one thing that people put that really gets them going is religion, and it's a sense of peace, and it's a sense of control. That there's a certain sense of control that you can have with the religion that you follow. And I think anything that touches it, then that's why you have it's a loss of control.
Correct.
That people feel ultimately.
Because everything else is so chaotic.
Everything else is so chaotic. Here's this one thing that I have complete control on. And the moment you touch it, there is this feeling that you're losing control, and which is why you have outrage, especially around religion. So those are tricky things to navigate. And I think a good comic, but I also understand how oppressive this can be for people who don't believe, who want to question dogma. Because it's never a good time to question dogma. किसी भी society में, या तो आप minority हो तो मत करो, क्योंकि वैसे ही आपको marginalize कर रहे हैं. आप majority हो तो आप different other reasons की आपको लोग करने नहीं देंगे, because So maybe this is also a challenge for creators, for comics, to get innovative with how they can put their word across without being just like in your face,
outrightly
offensive.
vulgar or indecent.
Yeah, like how do you navigate these social realities, which are realities of India?
True.
We can't ignore them.
True.
And
Because
there's
I think one thing which you said, which I found very interesting, the censorship thing which you said, right? Like censor yourself with this because you have a sense of responsibility, not because you're afraid.
Yeah.
I feel like when that sense of responsibility comes in, your brain also starts to think in a way that is, मुझे बोलना है, but
कैसे
how do I
बोलूं?
say it
How do I say it in a way
in a
that
respectful?
I reach my audience also? I'm able to have an impact also, but I'm also not alienating a lot of other people.
Correct.
And there's this really good Jim Corbett line where he says that, that to make fun of someone's superstition, something to the effect that if you only have the right to make fun of someone's superstition if you've lived their life. Right? People create these stories, these narratives, these superstitions, which may be very idiotic to me, but they do it to cope with life. And I always have empathy, which again, like my friends get very irritated with this, but I have a certain sense of empathy towards people who may believe in dogma or in superstition or may hold something very dear to them, which I will not when it comes to religion, culture, social norms.
They have faith.
Because that's how they deal with life.
Correct.
And an attack on that is an attack of their coping mechanism.
Correct. I mean, this can be applied to you also, honestly,
Yeah.
because, like, for example, your belief in what journalism is, your belief in what your job is, that kind of forms your identity also. If someone attacks you on that, you will also try to hold on to it
Yeah.
and not want to let it go.
Yeah.
So how is that any different from someone who is believing in a god
Yeah.
or
So I
like an
think that-
ideology?
Yeah, like so comics operating here, we'll have to understand we're not a Europe, we're not a society which is atheist. We're not. There are things that an Indian will hold way more dear than maybe say an American or a European. And how do you then navigate that? How do you still be a change maker? How do you still get people to think about their dogmas, their superstition, their beliefs? And I think that's like real talent to be able to do it.
It is. Absolutely.
And some people do it very well. I think
Yeah.
like one of my favorite comics, Varun Grover's recent show, Nothing Makes Sense. I think the most brilliant part in it is when he's making fun of Punjabi families. There's this whole segment about Punjabi families, how they deal with grief, what's wrong with them. And it's such a brilliant social commentary. It makes you question yourself and your dogmas. I mean, as a society. And it's also really brutally funny, and it's a joke on the people. But it's done so cleverly and so sensitively that I think it's really well done.
So finally, free speech should be protected.
Yes, we need free speech to be protected because, like I said, that's like access to clean air, which we don't have in Delhi, but we want.
Yeah. But clearly it's not so simple,
It's not
otherwise
so
we wouldn't be talking about it for an hour. That's the
Yeah,
whole
but
point.
baseline, let's agree that by protection, we mean we're not stopping your right to be offended. Be offended. It's good. But baseline, don't kill. And I don't deserve to be in jail because a politician wants me in
Don't
jail.
cause suffering.
Yeah, don't cause suffering.
Physical, mental, whatever it is, don't cause suffering. Don't get so offended that you want to take revenge and cause suffering on another human being. That's, I think, a baseline
Yeah.
that we can work with.
With
And
that,
especially if
Welcome
you
to
are...
our Osho class. of
Yes.
free
especially
speech.
especially I
Shri
feel
Meghnad ji.
it needs to be mentioned if you are a part of the state, if you are someone in the court. I feel like there needs to be a little more nuance to dealing with cases like this, because I
Yeah.
feel like our police se leke judiciary se leke political class se leke everyone is just like pandering to a mob.
Yeah.
I feel like that needs to stop. I'm just saying. Because unless that happens, our reasonable restrictions will not reasonable anymore. They're unreasonable ban jate. So let's not do that. But thank you so much, Manisha.
Thank you. It was
Thank
lovely
you.
being here on
Yes.
your podcast.
Yes.
Very happy.
First
and
episode
I
of this podcast.
Look forward to seeing many, many, many episodes of this show.
Yes. Remember, life is not so simple. It's really not so simple.